In any given moment, we're either creating from vision or we're creating from circumstance. It's like, am I aligned? Am I showing up aligned to what I'm saying I want? Or am I showing up based on a version of my past?
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
What if the reason you're not living the life you truly want is because you've never clearly defined what that life actually looks like? In today's episode of Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy, I'm joined by Jennifer Hudye Moscow, founder of Vision Driven Global and one of the leading experts on helping entrepreneurs and high achievers get radically clear on their personal and business vision. Jennifer breaks down how your vision isn't just a fluffy dream or a motivational poster. It's a strategic blueprint for your identity, your business, your relationships, and your freedom. You'll learn how to tap into the power of your subconscious to align your daily actions with a vivid, emotionally charged future that actually pulls you forward. We explore the difference between a goal and a true vision, why most people are unknowingly creating from their past rather than their potential, the psychology behind why vision works and why most people get it wrong, and practical tools to craft a 3-year vivid vision that rewires your belief systems and reprograms your life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, an executive in transition, or simply someone looking to live more intentionally, this episode will inspire you to think bigger and live bolder. And now for today's show. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dave. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this conversation and for you to really share, your unique wisdom into this whole concept around vision, which I've always believed is one of the most important concepts for people to understand. I think it's really like a superpower that people can have to break down doors, right, in terms of getting what they really want in life, or helping you get through some of these times in your life where there's just so much friction or barriers or obstacles. But when you have that clarity in your vision, like, it can just really mean the world, and ultimately it's about really living life intentionally. Right. So when we know that, we plan our time accordingly and everything. So really excited about this show. I think the audience is going to get so much value out of this discussion and this super important topic. So appreciate your time today. And why don't we kick things off with just telling us a little bit about your background? I know you have a unique background coming from Canada, and you've done so much at such an early age and everything. And how did this all kind of, transpire for you?
Yeah. So, I grew up in a little town of 500 people in Saskatchewan, Canada. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I had a pet buffalo as a little pet. It's a very rural farming town. And there was something at a young age that I was so grateful for, which is, my father, my uncle, my grandfather, they partnered together in business. And so I got to be in the entrepreneurial environment, but I got to see, the vision was planted early on. And what that meant was, like, I had a deep-seated belief, I could create anything that I wanted. And when I was 18, I moved from Saskatchewan to Phoenix, Arizona, and I bootstrapped a business when I was in college, and it became, when I was kind of near the end of college, I was still getting it up and going, and I was bootstrapping this business, virtually unknown in the space, didn't have a team, was just figuring things out as I went. And I went to a business dinner where there was some very brilliant entrepreneurs there, and there was some of us really, like, young, hungry entrepreneurs that were just being able to be in that environment and learn from these entrepreneurs that had built $100 million businesses, et cetera. I was really excited about it. And one of the entrepreneurs asked me, hey, what is your vision for your company? And it was a little marketing agency at the time called Conscious Copy. And I remember being so confused, like my vision, like, what do you mean? Like I'm just trying to bootstrap this thing. I'm just trying to get to the next month. I can't even think 3 months in advance. And he said, your 3-year vision, like, where are you headed? What does it look like? And in that moment, I realized I didn't know. And I was so focused just on what was in front of me, and trying to pay my bills and figure out how to hire my first team member and how to get more clients. And he said to me, one of the most important things that you can do is take the time to actually get clear on what it is that you really want this business to look like 3 years into the future, as if it's already happened. And this entrepreneur had built $200 million businesses. And so there was a lot of weight that his advice came with. And so I trusted him and I took action on that advice. And I remember sitting down, I was at my little condo, and it was a Friday night, and I'm just starting to map out my first version of, what this vision for my company was going to look like. And also what I wanted the other areas of my life to look like too. And at first I just felt like I was making shit up, because I was. And I wrote down the dream clients that I wanted to work with, and like the type of team that I wanted to have, and the kind of travel that I wanted to do, and what I wanted my health to look like. And again, it felt really uncomfortable at the time, because I kept being like, I am literally just making this up. Like, there's aspects of this where I have zero evidence how I'm going to make this happen. And only a couple months later, I crafted this, what it was called a vivid vision. And the term is coined by Cameron Herold, which I had partnered in Vivid Vision with shortly after. But, I crafted this vision for my personal life and my business, and I put it up on my wall, kind of like the one behind me. And I looked at it every single day. And as I was, would wake up in the mornings, I would just scan it and be like, okay, is what I'm doing today in service of this? And I started making decisions by my vision. And even though I didn't have the money to recruit, a big, top team yet, because I was still bootstrapping my business, I used my vision to enroll key team members. And there were, a series of kind of right place, right time moments where my hard work and consistent effort was met with some luck. Like, that's the only way I could describe it, or synchronicity. And I had an opportunity to get in front of a group of top entrepreneurs, actually in the group that I think we met in at Genius Network, and Joe Polish. And that was such a catalyst for me, where it really launched that first business, Conscious Copy. And so many of like the names that were dream names on my client list and my vivid vision ended up becoming clients over the course of the next few years. And I ended up building the $1 million business and growing the team and starting to build and design, my dream life. And in that journey, Cameron Herold, who again is the author of Vivid Vision, he became a client of mine. And he was actually the one who gave me that advice initially around creating a vivid vision. And he asked me if I would collaborate with him and start helping some of the entrepreneurs that he was coaching and mentoring with their vivid visions. And that was back in 2016. And so fast forward to today, and I built an organization really around helping entrepreneurs with their 3-year vision, both personally and in business. We've helped over 700 companies one-on-one through the process, about 4,000 others through our workshops, retreats. had the pleasure of speaking at groups like YPO, EO, Tiger 21, spoke at Richard Branson's Necker Island last year, all on the topic of vision. And I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in, thousands of my clients' lives that, when someone is crystal clear of what it is that they want, why it is that they want it, and they keep that top of mind while making decisions, they are going to bring that vision to life, because where our attention goes, our energy flows. And we have this extraordinary capability as human beings called personal agency, which is we get to decide what we want to use this time with in this life that we get to live. And I think so many people forget that, when they're just living their lives on default mode, and they're allowing their past to continue just repeating itself year after year after year with maybe some small increments.
Yeah. Wow. Such a powerful story there of how you got into it and everything. And I think for the audience, why don't we, I have several things I want to really unpack, because I think this whole concept around vision is really, it's deceptively simple, right? We just kind of talk about a vision, but yet so many people actually struggle with, getting there. And so I want to talk through the psychology of vision and everything, and what that potentially means. But also let's just really begin with, very simplistically, can you define what a good vision statement looks like? Because we were never taught this, right, anywhere. Whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, an entrepreneur, anyone, no one was ever taught, how do I create really a vision for myself? We've heard we've done some vision boards and, little exercises like that, right? Mm-hmm. But I know you have a very comprehensive definition of what that is. So let's unpack that.
Yeah. So starting with a vision, what is a vision? And if you think of even the word, vision, it's sight, it's seeing. So it is being able to go, imagine going into your future. And in this case, for our process, oftentimes we use 3 years, but it could also be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But you take your imagination into the future, and it's a snapshot in time. What do you see? And how do you know that you have, quote unquote, arrived at the destination that you want to be at? That is vision. And when it comes to a little bit of the psychology behind it, the human brain operates primarily through our subconscious mind, which 95% of our decisions are driven by our subconscious mind. And the subconscious is kind of working in the background 24/7, but it also only operates, it is very literal, and it only operates in pictures and emotions. Pictures plus emotions equals stories. And so what defines, say, a good vision versus a not so good vision is, a good vision is you and I, if we were to travel into the future and we land, say it's December 31st, 2028, and you describe your life, that we would see the same thing, and it would be objective, not subjective of, yeah, you arrived exactly where you wanted to be. Meaning we what do we see? What do we hear? How do you feel? How do we know? Whereas a not so good vision is very subjective, and usually most people will use fluffy general words. Life is awesome. I'm feeling great. Business is rocking. So the example that I like to give is, John F. Kennedy, when he stood at the podium years ago, he said, we are going to put a man on the moon by the end of this decade. That was a vision that, whether it was the astronauts going to space or the janitor, that was there, thousands of people, millions of people will know when that happens. He did not say we're going to be number one in the space race, or we are going to really, push the edges of science in space. It was a tangible, visceral moment in time in the future that now they could reverse engineer and start to make decisions by.
Yeah. Love that. So tangible, visceral, kind of like almost when we talk about creating smart goals, right, around something that's measurable, maybe obtainable. You can quantify it somehow. Would you say?
You know, I make a distinction that there's a difference between a goal and a vision.
Okay.
And your goals are actually in service of your vision, but they're not the vision itself. And this is where a lot of people get mixed up. The number of, for example, entrepreneurs or business owners that I talk to, and they come to me and they're like, I'm crystal clear on my vision. And I'm like, amazing. Tell me about it. Because I love hearing people's vision. This is my space. And they'll say $10 million. Or in this case, maybe it's for a personal vision, I want a $10 million personal net worth or $5 million personal net worth. Well, that's a metric. It's not necessarily the vision. Now, it's a relevant and useful metric to be able to hone in, but let's imagine for a moment that you want to build a house and you have a blank slate of land, Dave, and all of the contractors that are going to help build your home are coming and they're ready to go. And as soon as you say go, they're going to build it. If you only tell them, I need you to build a $2 million home in 6 months or less, it's a smart goal. They're probably not going to build the house of the vision that you have in mind. But they got the budget, which is very useful. So the vision is actually like, is it a 2-story or a 1-story? Is it modern or is it like kind of like the European look? And when you walk in, what do you see? Are there a lot of windows? Is it open? Is it spacious? When you go upstairs, what do you see? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? And this is how specific we want to get with the personal vision. And then also the business vision is like, when we walk inside, what do we see?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so good. And I think that really a lot of this, for me and my experience is really like so many things are really rooted in freedom. Is kind of what the deepest level that we're going for. So we talk about financial freedom, right? But you like Dan Sullivan's 4 freedoms, right? Freedom of a relationship, right? Freedom of purpose, right? Waking up every day and being fascinated and motivated about the work that you're doing. There's freedom of time, right? Choosing, how we want to spend our time every day. So, as I always think about vision, it's really kind of getting clear on what does that freedom look like. And I think of it like, when I read Vivid Vision, it's like, it's helped me think about it really 3-dimensionally, as you said, like, how am I feeling emotionally about my relationships? Mm-hmm. Right? Am I doing everything I possibly can, for my family? What is the quality of those relationships? How much time am I spending, with my kids? Am I supporting them? I'm being the best father that I possibly could be. Right. And, I think, the more I love that also storytelling, is great too, to add that in there. So kind of creating that future state story. And then let's kind of talk about that a little bit too, the psychology. So you're saying that your subconscious, so you can create, your own outcome, your own vision based on your thoughts, right? Because your thoughts really become your reality, which becomes your emotions, which becomes your actions. That's what's happened. And, knowing Ben Hardy that we both know, right? He's, in his book, Future Self, right? He talks a lot about that, right? Is that creating that future self for you is super powerful so that you can actually make decisions as you get clarity on what this vision is. You actually start to become your future self before you've actually arrived at some destination, whether that's 3 years, kind of 10 years down the road. So I think that transformation is also what's wildly valuable about creating this vision.
Yes, absolutely. And on that, it's even like backing up for a moment. For someone listening to this, if you're like, okay, this is getting like a little bit too woo woo or foo foo for me, we'll like take a couple steps back and even just state, your current frame of mind, your current belief system, or in your past actions have created your current reality, right? And then when we set a new vision for our lives, say it's, what in business, if you're like, I want to double my top line revenue, or I want to lose, 20 pounds and I want to feel fit and strong and be able to wake up in the morning energized and go to sleep rested. I want, to have deep, intimate relationships with my family and to be able to take off 12 weeks per year and travel to these places, etc. So there's a gap between where you're at and that vision. And to your point, Dave, it's like one of the key questions then becomes, okay, what kind of mindset and beliefs does that version of me in the future have that's different than what I have today? And then so much of the process is yes, taking action, like in alignment to that vision, but it's also that internal process of what parts of myself do I need to overcome or release or work through so that I can become that person. Because if you want to double your business, for example, there's probably things that you're doing today, beliefs that you have that can't come with you. And so I'm glad that you brought it up because it's a really important part of the process of not only the building of taking massive action, but also the identity shift that is required in order to build it.
Hey, it's Dave Wolcott here. Let me ask you something. Are you tired of the same old financial advice that leaves you spinning your wheels? If you're ready to discover the real secrets the ultra wealthy use to build unstoppable wealth, then I've got something just for you. My new book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy, is your ticket to learning the proven strategies that the top 1% don't want you to know. This book isn't just about money. It's about building a life of purpose, freedom, and lasting impact. And I want to give you a free copy. Visit holisticwealthstrategy.com and get yours today. It's time to level up your financial game and create the future you deserve. Yeah. We had a super cool exercise at our mastermind event this year where we had members actually write a letter to themselves from their future self in 10 years. Right?
Love it.
And it was just so eye-opening in terms of what is the gap? What is the delta between where they are now and where they want to get to in terms of their relationships, their health, their business, their income, their wealth, like all of these different things. But it all of a sudden became like super clear to that. We actually even had one member just outright put the stake in the ground and say, I'm a billionaire. I'm going to become a billionaire. It just became that clear to him, by kind of going through that exercise was just really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yeah. So where can people start? I think it's so fascinating, right? Because this is not something that you can just say, okay, it's Monday afternoon. I'm going to go kind of carve out my vision here. I'm dedicating, 2 hours to kind of do this. What I've found is, and you're much more creative and successfully creative than I am. So I find that I have to put myself into a peak state, be in a peak environment where I can produce something like this, right? I want to have absolutely no filters. So for instance, it's being in an amazing place that I'm inspired by, probably having some kind of workout for me. So my head is like in peak condition and I'm very in a, inspired type of state. And then really, it's like having absolutely no filters, no what if this, what if that, and then starting to put pen to paper and actually start to craft out what does this look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly it. As far as a first step, we say it's getting in a vision state. And so what that means is being, centered, open, relaxed, and expansive. Now, for some people, that can look like, a workout, doing some breath work, meditation, maybe, going somewhere that feels really expansive, a beach, a mountain, your favorite hotel lobby, bar, but somewhere where you're not stuck in your day to day. Because again, your current state of mind has created your current reality. And so if there's aspects of your current life that are overwhelming, that piss you off, that are, frustrating, exhausted, and you're trying to create from that state, you're just going to create more of the same of the past. And so you literally have to imagine unplugging from your past. You have a blank slate, go into your future. And it's like, okay, if I could have it all my way, what do I want? What do I want this to look like? So that's, where to start. Step one, get in that vision state. And then, step two is starting with your personal vision first, and then your business vision. The personal vision being, and let me actually back up. It's, you imagine just like entering a time machine, and you got out of the time machine, and you're looking around at your life, and it's roughly 3 years into the future. I like using year end because it's a good reference point for most people. So in this case, it's December 31st, 2028. And you're celebrating New Year's and you're reflecting on the past 3 years. And it's been the best 3 years of your life. And then you'd ask yourself, okay, what does my health look like? My physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. What do my relationships look like? My partnership or marriage, family, friendships, community. What does my lifestyle look like? Where I live, where I travel, my hobbies. What does my personal wealth look like? My active income, so that may look like business, my investments, and then my philanthropy. And number three is you paint the picture and you tell the story. So what does it look like? What do you smell? What do you feel when you're in the story? Like you're watching the movie of your life through your eyes. What do you see? How do you feel? And the more specific you can get, the better. And there's so many nuances to this. It sounds simple, but people will often, in the work that I do with clients, it's easy for people to get caught up in the how, right? And they all get stuck in, well, how do I make this happen? Or there's areas that they're clear of and areas that they're unclear of. And that's so much of our work, is being able to sift and sort this and really get to the truth of the matter, because you got to pick something too that evokes emotion for you, that when you see your pen to paper and you see the notes, it brings something up, yes, I would love this. I would love this. Some people will be like, oh, $50 million, but they're not emotionally connected to it. And then likely they're probably not going to have to do what's required in order to build that. So 3, paint the picture. And, from there, it's you, 4 is communicating in present tense and reflecting back. So you're not saying the future is going to look like this. It does look like this. And here's why, is because there has been now countless research studies that have been done, even, Harvard to Stanford, where they'll put electromagnetic caps on people. And for example, one of the studies was people playing the piano. And they did a study where half of the people, they were just imagining themselves playing the piano, not thinking about playing the piano, but actually imagining it. And the same areas of their brain were firing and wiring as if they were actually playing. And then they took the second group that was actually playing and practicing the piano. And same thing, their brain was firing and wiring as they were playing it. And the group that was just imagining it, they were able to actually accelerate their skill set just by imagining, not even actually doing it. And the reason why is because this subconscious part of our brain does not know the difference between imagination and reality. And this part of our subconscious brain only operates in the now. It doesn't actually operate in the future or the past. And so we can literally imagine ourselves in the future, and this part of our brain believes that it's happening. So when we craft our vision in present tense, and then we're reviewing it and listening to it, and frequently making decisions by it and coming from it, this part of our brain, it's actually like, now we have we're learning about like AI assistants and AI agents and things like this. This is like an AI agent in your brain already. It's like you plug in, hey, this is what's important to me. And now it is scanning everything in your day-to-day life to see if there's everything outside of you is a match to the vision. This is actually kind of the science behind, when people talk about like, if you decide, okay, I want a white Tesla, and then suddenly you start seeing white Teslas everywhere, that's because you signaled to this part of your brain called the reticular activating system, hey, this is important to me. So now they were probably there before, but you're aware of them now because this part of your brain says it's important. And so the same thing goes with our vision is when people aren't clear around what it is that they want and what it is that they're looking for, the best opportunity can be right in front of your nose, but you have no idea because this part of your brain isn't scanning for that. But as soon as you say, I want to go on a Europe trip, and then suddenly you run into all these people who have, can provide you perspective or advice or opportunity, now your brain is looking for it. So all of that was like, a little rabbit hole. All that to say, present tense, reflecting back, super important. So get in a vision state, start with your personal vision, paint the picture, go into a time machine 3 years into the future, paint the picture of what it is that you would love in present terms, reflecting back.
Do you like 3 years versus 10 years, or what is the difference? What should people be thinking about in terms of a time construct?
Yeah. So, it's fun to play in many different time frames, right? Because the purpose of it is just helping your brain to expand. But 3 years, we found time and time again, and like I have worked with like Olympic athlete coaches to some of the top executives in business to people like very much in like the spiritual world. And there's this power of the 3 years because it's far enough in the future that you can dream big and you don't need to know the how just yet. But it's close enough that you can get specific and therefore start to then condense it down into making goals and plans around it. Like, for example, right now, it is so hard, to imagine what 10 years from now is going to look like, in 2020 or 2036, right? 2035, especially with AI now, even 3 years is a stretch because it's just, we're condensing. It feels like, the acceleration, the singularity is happening right now. And so 3 years, you could dream big, but you don't need to know the how. And if you know exactly how you're going to make it happen, it is a plan, not a vision. So the mere fact that you don't know how, great, that's good. That's a vision. Most people who claim a vision, they don't know how yet. Elon Musk, he's been saying for a while he's going to colonize Mars. He has no idea how. but that isn't a prerequisite.
Why do you think people struggle with creating a vision so much?
Number one, I believe people struggle because of conditioning from their past. When we're kids, we have the most amazing, extraordinary imaginations. The kids live in this alternate reality where they're a baker in the morning and they're a race car driver in the afternoon, and they the future is open and endless for them. But I'm sure each one of us can, reflect back to moments, whether we were young kids or into middle school or high school, where we had someone of influence. And that could be a parent, that could be a teacher, that could even just be the media that conditioned us that our heads are in the clouds, to be more reasonable. Or maybe our parents or teachers modeled something for us or made some sort of statement I wanted to be whatever it was. I wanted to be a musician, but, I had to make money, and so then for a kid, they hear, don't even explore what it is that I really want. There's this system and I just got to plug into the system. So I think that in the work that I do with entrepreneurs, whether it's a one-on-one or in our workshops or retreats, as we go back and we unpack I found there's about 7 different blocks that can keep people stuck from really getting clarity on what they want. But the good news is that, and what I wholeheartedly believe is that the vision is always there. It's just like these blocks that cover it up, but it's there. And then the second piece is, I think so many people, they look outside of themselves for their vision, almost like they're looking for lost keys. They're like, wait, what do I want? Where is it? Do I got to go here for it? Versus being able to ask themselves the bigger, more important, deep questions. And that leads me to the third reason I think that it's so hard for people is because self-honesty is a prerequisite to clarity. And most people aren't honest with themselves. And oftentimes they're not honest with themselves because they don't want the responsibility that comes along with that honesty and the decisions that they'll have to make. So it's more convenient and safer for them to be confused and pretend not to know.
Wow. Fascinating. We had Dan Sullivan on last year, and this could be something that could help the listeners out too. That was really interesting is, he said that, we have to be able to say, if you want something, you want it, and you don't have to justify why you want it. Because the minute your brain starts going to justifying why you want something, you kill that creativity right there. And he has been, I guess, for the past, 45, 50 years, literally journaling every day. He writes what he wants. Mm-hmm. And if he wants it, he wants it. There's just he doesn't have to justify anything. But it is fascinating how, even culturally speaking, and how our mind is really wired, that we always, whatever it is, whether it's material or even it could be a relationship or time. I want to take more time off. Then something comes in the way, right? You have to justify, well, I'm going to need to work harder. I'm going to need to hire someone else, or, how am I going to do that? So it's a great way to try to remove the filters. I think, for us, we have so many just different arbitrary filters that are on us from really kind of thinking big and creating that vision that we really deserve.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point that some people call it paradigm or our belief system. And it's, we have just been playing in a particular thought pattern that we lock into place, and we decide that is true until we're willing to really analyze it and ask ourselves, is this really true? And that could look like I even reflect back to when I just started in business and thinking like, how much can I charge, for a day of my time, for example. And it felt feeling so stretchy and so scary at that time. And then now I literally charge more than 10x what I thought before, when I just started, but it was having to transform any of those beliefs that were standing in the way of owning and just being neutral to this is the new standard. And I think as leaders, as entrepreneurs, really anyone, it is so critical for us to constantly be mastering raising our standard and then transforming any of the beliefs that are between, like, as you said, the delta of the two.
Yeah. That's a perfect segue. I was going to ask you next, like tactically speaking, right? So, we're in 2025, right? So if you're saying people are going to work on their 3-year vision right now, so that's going to end in December of 2028. Mm-hmm. So just from a tactics standpoint, what happens 2 years from now? Are you still trying to complete that 3-year vision, you created today? Or
Yes.
are we constantly pushing out that 3-year vision? So like every year it's like another 3 years, or how do you see the most successful implementation?
Yeah. I've found that it's very useful to cast a 3-year vision. So in this case, 2025, and then stick to that 3-year vision over the course of 3 years, because it's kind of like building a house where, year 1, you're laying the foundation, and year 2, you're putting up the walls and the roof. And then year 3, there's elements that, you're going to be filling in the details. And so it is helpful even for the part of our brain to feel that sense of completion. Now, that's not to say that you can't do other exercises to continue, pushing out on, doing a version of the exercise 5 years, 10 years, etc. But the 3 years allows you to say, okay, it's, 2028, that's in my own imagination, I've arrived there. Then it is asking, okay, what over the course of the next 12 months, what are the goals now that are in service to that vision that I'm going to set for the next 12 months? And then similar to a strategic plan, what is the next quarter look like? Like, for example, I'll show you. I have right here my Q2 2025. This is a one-page plan. And on it has my 3 objectives for my personal life, and how I'll know that I have made massive progress towards my 3-year vision. And the 3-year vision's on the back wall here. And some of these are lead goals, meaning I measure them on a day-to-day basis. For example, one of mine is I meditate for 60 minutes a day. Yeah. And so I can measure that on a day-to-day basis. Whereas there's others here that are lag goals, meaning I'll know that I've accomplished them once I've quote unquote arrived. So my husband and I are looking for a new house, and I have, specific objectives of how I'll know that I've moved this forward. So there's like the tangible, tactical, you take your 3-year vision, distill it down into 12-month, I call it a 1-year focus. And then you have your 3-month plan, when you execute on that. So that's 50% of it is actually like building it, doing the actions aligned to the vision. The second 50% is what I call become, which is the inner work required in order to build the vision. And what are the beliefs that I'm going to need to transform in order to bring this vision to life? How do I make sure that I'm coming from my vision? A mentor of mine, Mary Morrissey, says we don't go to our vision, we come from our vision. It actually isn't something out there one day, someday we arrive to. We just use that as a mental construct for our brain. But it's every day, am I showing up as the version of me that is aligned to that 3-year vision? And then this is the place where you're going to start to notice synchronicities accelerate themselves. So for example, man, I have so many wild stories, but like I have a client who we crafted their 3-year vision, and they one of the aspects of the vision is they wanted to be featured on this well-known like TV. It's called Goop, which is like a health channel run by a well-known celebrity, and they have a supplement brand, and they had no idea how, like the strategy of how they were going to get to that company. We hadn't even come up with that yet, but we started doing some of the inner work required, and they literally had one of their team members get a call from that network asking if they wanted to partner with them. And that's not necessarily something that you can make happen, but you can make it welcome by upgrading, your internal operating system to be a match to that. And that's where, you can go into some of the energetics, but it's a both and here when you really want to go after a big vision. It's not just more doing. You got to match it with how you're showing up.
Yeah, a word that comes to mind is really congruency, right? I think when you have that, clear, right, clarity around what your vision is, you can live in the present congruent to your future self. And the more clarity you have, the easier it is to align to that, like you say. So it can be, extremely powerful to be on that track and really kind of making that true transformation, like we talked about, which is what all of this really leads to.
Yeah. Yeah. On that, I oftentimes say in any given moment, we're either creating from vision or we're creating from circumstance. Any given moment. It's like, am I aligned? Am I showing up aligned to what I'm saying I want? Or am I showing up based on a version of my past?
Yeah.
And so it's not, just like, okay, 3 years into the future, and then I just got to wait for 3 years. No. It's like right now, in every moment, we have an opportunity to show up as that version of ourselves.
Jen, if you could give just one piece of advice to the listeners about how they could really get clear on their own vision statements, what would it be?
The one piece of advice I would give is like really practice suspending all belief of what your current life looks like, and ask yourself the question. And let me back up here before I share what the question is. So most people think the most valuable question to ask around vision is what do I want? That is a phenomenal question. It's a great place to start. I had a mentor share with me, though, that there's an even more elevated question to ask when really wanting to get to the core of your vision. And the question is, what would I love? What would I love? Because there's something about, creating from our head. And sometimes with what we want, the ego is very sneaky of coming up with things that we think that we should have, or what others want for us, or what makes sense. And then there's definitely like a lot of layers in there of what it is that we want, but it can become a little bit more murky and confusing. When we get clear of what would I love, and we are answering that question from a place of like our heart and our like deepest desire, or as Napoleon Hill said in Think and Grow Rich, our burning desire, you're going to notice that so much more noise gets removed and you just get to the meat, like you get to the good stuff of, oh, it's that. Yeah, that's what I would really love. So asking yourself that question and not being hard on yourself if the answers don't come right away, because this is truly, it's a practice. Like I have been doing this work now for over a decade, and I get better every time, but because it's like a muscle that gets flexed. So don't be upset at yourself if you get stuck, usually it's just because, you're back in your head and coming up with the reasons why you can't have it.
Awesome. Really sage advice and fantastic discussion. Really grateful for the opportunity to have you on and share all that wisdom with the audience. If people would like to, learn more about you or creating, their own visions or starting to work with you, what is the best place for them to connect?
Yeah, if you're interested about anything related to getting clear on your vision, crafting your vivid vision, you can go to visiondrivenglobal.com. Again, that's visiondrivenglobal.com. When you go there, right at the top of the page, we have a free download called the Vivid Vision Mind Map. It's a series of questions and also, room for you to be able to answer them that provides much more specific questions to the different areas of your business in your life that you can start to ask yourself. And then there's also some other really valuable resources on the website, or you can even just fill in the intake form if you're interested in learning about how to work together.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jen. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wealth Strategy Secrets. If you'd like to get a free copy of the book, go to holisticwealthstrategy.com. That's holisticwealthstrategy.com. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming opportunities at Pantheon, please visit pantheoninvest.com. That's pantheoninvest.com.